Hello, and welcome to the Ohio Hauntings and Legends podcast. We will be taking you to places you have never dreamt of going. Hundreds, if not thousands, of haunted and abandoned locations. We will visit with the paranormal from your nightmares and try to understand the unexplained. Ohio alone has 88 counties within our state, and virtually each one of those counties has a story to tell. Ohio's history is bloodstained throughout its history. We will be covering more than just Ohio. We will cover the state you live in, the country. Trust me. There are thrills, chills, and we are upping the fright factor with each new stop we make. We will be traveling the world, the globe, looking for the strange, the mysterious, and the frightening. Mostly, we will find the unexplainable. Many of these episodes are genuine. Others are legend or hearsay. Believe those that you choose or believe in none. It is your choice. Just get comfortable, sit back, dim the lights, and listen.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my friends. Not only is it Wednesday, it's the last Wednesday of 2021, and that means it's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm, of course, your host and narrator, Henrik Kuto, and thank you so much for joining us as we say goodbye to 2021 and hello to 2022, the only way we know how, with a terrifying and gruesome and nasty, scary story just for you. And I want to say a huge thank you for everybody who enjoyed our 5 Christmas stories we released, including our bonus episode on Christmas Day. We had a lot more listeners than I was expecting on Christmas Day, so I hope I made your holiday just a little bit more enjoyable. And a huge thank you to all of our Spotify listeners who are already heeding the call and giving us a nice star review on the Spotify app. That's right, if you listen on Spotify, you can now rate your favorite podcasts, and it sure does help us out. So whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, please leave a rating. It really helps people get into the show. And if you want to help a little bit more, you can head to WeeklySpooky.com and join our Patreon, or buy something cool in the shop. The Patreon, though, that's the way to go, because if we hit 100 patrons, I will unveil something very special and very exciting to all of you. Speaking of exciting and special and unveiled to all of you, I have a special announcement about how we'll be spending January on Weekly Spooky that I'm going to mention after today's story, because today's story is about having a good time. It's about ringing in the new year. It's about getting to know your loved ones and finding out just how far New Year, New Me can actually go. So, why don't you get cozy right now? It's getting cold outside, right? Get yourself a little blanket. Get real comfortable, because it's time to listen to the story right now. A Few Cold Ones by David O'Hanlon. The man stood alone in the parking lot, watching a chip bag roll like a tumbleweed across the asphalt. The abandoned Kmart no longer held any of its corporate branding. The moss and mildew-speckled bricks were covered in graffiti, and the windows glazed over with years of grime. The man pulled his gown up in a bunch and aimed at the graffiti, relieving himself between a proclamation of love and a smiley face. The stream slapped against the brickwork and splattered the toes of his filthy hospital slippers. He groaned. He needed to get real clothes if he was going to enjoy his self-awarded release from the Serletti Institute. Kmart had always been his favorite store. The long shifts at the poultry plant sapped most of the joy from his life. Then he discovered this particular store. Every Sunday, he set the tone for the week by coming in to get all his essentials, enjoy the hospitality, and visit with the employees. Especially Diane. He scratched at the fat scar between the silver waves of hair. He would never forget his first love. He was sure she hadn't forgotten him. He'd see if he could find her once he got himself together. Whispers from inside snapped his mind back to the present and curled his lips in a malevolent smile that spread like a tearing wound. He leaned his face close to a fist-size hole in the window. Nothing was stirring between the leftover shelves and racks. A camera flash lit a corner of the store. The sudden illumination left dots flickering in his vision, but, for the briefest moment, he saw the two urban explorers reflected in a spider-webbed mirror. He covered his mouth to hide his giggling. Kmart was still the best place to do his shopping. Brew Year's Eve is about more than just busty beer wenches and dollar pints, Darren said with a swing of his arm that splashed beer from his glass and onto his shoes. It's about the resilience of the American people in the face of puritanical religious fervor. Maggie Mills rolled her eyes. It's about getting drunk off your ass at the Florida-Georgia line and belching your ABCs with the other Neanderthals. I can make it all the way to O, Darren chortled. Brew Year's Eve was Oklahoma's largest beer festival. Its exponential growth and one-of-a-kind setting attracted beer connoisseurs from across the country. 3,000 attendees meandered the grounds of the Old Springer Hotel. Short bursts of fireworks detonated overhead every hour in a countdown to the new year. Local bands cycled on and off the grand stage to the east of the building to get the crowd fired up for the headliners. How Love Rocket was still riding the success of their 1986 hit, Sweet Cream, was anyone's guess, but their appearance added another $50 to the already steep admission price. Vendor tents lined the manicured western yard with an assortment of wares that rivaled most malls. On the south lawn, partygoers gambled on carnival games for a chance to win cash and prizes. The northern sprawl directly in front of the hotel was a smoky haze of mingling scents from the rows of food trucks. And between them and the entrance, the hotel's ornate fountain featured Poseidon rising from a tower of lager-spewing sea life with his trident thrusting into the sky beneath the watchful eye of stained glass rose windows 6 stories overhead. 200 scantily clad serving girls gracefully prowled through the sea of people with trays of beer and then quickly sprinted back to the dressing room to empty the tips from their halter tops before making another round. Look around you, Maggie. This is historical. Darren spread his arms wide at the backdrop of the once lavish hotel. A vinyl banner fluttered in the chill breeze over its doors. Happy Brew Year from OK Brewing. The name's OK, but the beer is legendary. Darren's right, for once. Maggie's boyfriend Carlton put an arm around her waist. These guys did something really amazing here. Is that so? Maggie held his chin in place as one of the wenches bounced past them. And what could be more amazing than all this cleavage and cheap beer? Maggie's best friend and Darren's girlfriend, Karen, giggled. We're in the Springer Hotel, Darren said matter-of-factly. Maggie shrugged. And? Carlton held up a finger. How about I show you? The other 3 followed him through the crowd. They rounded the beer fountain and went to the main entrance where Carlton slapped the brickwork. A series of pockmarks dotted the facade beside a bronze plaque emblazoned with the name. Carlton pointed to the food vendors. On this night, in 1931, 60 Prohibition agents led by Two Gun Hart pulled up where those trucks are now, he said. The Springer Hotel refused to acknowledge Prohibition. Everyone knew it, but no one wanted to risk the wrath of Farrell Springer. But Hart was Al Capone's big brother, Darren interrupted, and brass balls are genetic. So, what happened? Karen moved closer to hear over the crowd. Farrell stepped out the front door and shouted, "If you're coming in, it's drinks for $1 or lead for free." Carlton whipped his hand up with his fingers making a gun, and then he fired a single shot, taking the hat right off Hart's head. Maggie poked a finger into a bullet hole, and they returned fire. "Boy, did they," Darren said. "The barrage killed Farrell and 3 bystanders in the lobby. The guests started pulling guns and the hotel became a battleground." Carlton jerked his head to the door and they continued inside. 9 people died in the shootout and a store of moonshine caught fire, killing 6 more and destroying the West Wing. "It was the largest mass killing in the history of Carpenter County," Darren added. "Barely. Otis Kilgore's Christmas party only missed the mark by 1, Carlton said with a snicker. He snapped his fingers and smiled wide. "Did you hear? Netflix is doing a movie about Otis. I hope they get Kevin Smith to play him." Carlton laughed. "That'd be a riot." "My babysitter used to tell me Otis would come and get me if I didn't listen to her," Karen mused. "Who tells a 6-year-old that?" "Most of the babysitters in Ottawa," Darren shrugged. Maggie sneered and nodded in agreement, remembering her own sitter's warnings. The couples made their way through the lobby and up the wide staircase between its hand-carved rails. In '93, OK bought the hotel and started restoring it for their headquarters as a slap in the face to the Prohibition days. The top 2 floors make up their offices, and they built their brewing facility on the ruins of the West Wing. Carlton laughed. "You can't tell me that's not the coolest story in the world." Maggie leaned on the banister and watched the crowd in the lobby. "What about the other 3 floors?" "Haunted as shit." Darren chugged the rest of his beer and whistled for a server. "Yep," Carlton added. "They renovated the rooms and rent them out as a tourist attraction. Everyone that's ever stayed here claims they saw weird things." Maggie lifted the festival pass hanging from the lanyard around her neck with a room key. "And we're spending the night with the ghosts and the drunks? What could go wrong?" A maniacal, shrill guffaw answered, and Carlton spun in a start. His hand swiped the glass from the giggling guest's hand on accident and splashed the contents across Karen's blouse. The sheer material clung to her, revealing the bare breasts beneath. She screamed at the icy shock of IPA and then covered up in embarrassment. Her free hand slapped the partygoer's cheek on reflex. The wide grin melted from the man's weathered face as the red handprint formed in its stead. He picked up the plastic pint glass from the floor and twisted it between his fingers, glaring at Karen through it. He pressed the rim into Carlton's chest. "Ain't that something? Not even a crack." He giggled again in a pitch that betrayed his stocky build. "Yeah, lots of new things in the world, huh?" Carlton cleared his throat. "Seriously, sorry about that, though." "No sense crying over spilled hooch," the man said with a chuckle before turning to Karen. "And you shouldn't be so quick to hide such wonderful tits. At least let an old man earn the smack you gave him." He licked his plump lips. "What the fuck did you say?" Darren grabbed the back of the man's shirt and slung him to the wall. "Darren, take it easy," Carlton called out. He took a step forward, fists clenched and ready to defend Karen's honor, when a walking refrigerator whisked between them like a leaf on a breeze. Darren's face bounced off a muscular chest. The security guard glared down at Darren and growled for him to be cool. That high-pitched giggle pierced the crowd again, and the guard turned to give the man the same warning. The Goliath pressed his finger into the man's chest. "I don't see a pass around your neck," he grumbled. The man giggled again and made a show of patting down his own torso. "I seem to have set it down somewhere." He scratched at the barren stretch of flesh where the scar created a second part in his hair. "I'll bet I left it in the restroom if you'd like to escort me to retrieve it." The security guard clamped his hand on the back of Giggle's neck and led him away. I think I'll do just that, pal. What in the actual fuck? Darren shook his head. Just some harmless old goon, Carlton said. Come on, Karen, let's go to your room and get you cleaned up. Maggie hooked her arm through Karen's and turned to Carlton. She kissed his cheek. We'll meet you two at the bar. I came for the fireworks, not to watch you two get into a drunken brawl. Behave. You sure this is the bathroom you used? The guard grunted. Oh yes, I'm positive of it. The man smoothed his hair in the mirror. I suppose it's possible I left it in my room, however. What's your name? The guard unclipped his radio. I'll go have someone check for it. The man chewed his bottom lip, tittering excitedly. The hell is your deal, man? Ain't nothing funny about that. My name's Otis. He cackled suddenly, making the guard jump. He tucked his hands in his pockets and looked around the bathroom. Can you stop being creepy as shit long enough to tell me your last name too? It's Kilgore. Otis Kilgore. Otis straightened up. All right, Otis. The guard raised the radio and paused. Hey, wasn't that the guy that killed all... The blade jabbed into the crevice of his hip and then glided up his body and through the thick cords of his neck. Otis pumped the pocket knife into his kidney and lung before the giant batted him away. Otis crashed through the stall door and landed on a toilet. The guard stomped toward Otis, who tapped his feet gleefully. The behemoth slipped in the arterial blood cascading down his body and crashed to his knees. Otis stood and stroked the man's cheek. Pardon my amusement, Otis chuckled, but you can't have slaughter without laughter. He jammed the knife through the guard's ear and tipped him over. He snorted in an attempt to suppress a burst of excitement. Otis bent and retrieved the radio from the man's belt. He pressed the call button. I need a room check on a rowdy guest, he wheezed. 10-4, what's the name? A voice answered. I'm afraid I didn't catch the last name with all the commotion, Otis said. I heard his buddy call him Darren. A long moment of silence followed before the voice came back. Looks like we got a Darren Hildebrand in 303. Say, who is this? I don't recognize the voice. Otis giggled. Can you believe that asshole? Karen pressed a cigarette between her lips. Have you got a light? Darren insists on lighting them for me. Maggie looked beside her to the crystal ashtray on the dresser and collected the book of matches bearing the OK Brewing logo. Compliments of the house. She broke one off and struck it. Karen puffed the cigarette to life, holding her soaked blouse up for examination before dropping it into the trash can. She blew smoke from the corner of her mouth. It had probably stained before we got home anyhow. Maggie tucked the matches into her jeans. The only thing I love more than your thriftiness is your modesty. Want to put your boobs away now? Karen pressed them together. Jealous much, Maggie Man-chest? She laughed, then realized the high school nickname still struck a nerve. Sorry, Mags. No biggie. Maggie stood and stretched, and flicked Karen's nipple. Ouch! Karen covered up and retrieved her suitcase. Fine, I'll put them away, you salty bitch. You enjoyed it. Maggie winked and collected the cigarette. Hurry up. We need to babysit the boys before they do something stupid. Karen slipped on a new shirt and buttoned it quickly. You don't think that creepy old man will bother us again, do you? Between booze and dementia, he probably won't realize he's met us before. Maggie opened the door and waved for her to follow. Karen grabbed her lanyard and tossed it over her neck before rushing to catch up. I'm just worried is all, Karen said as she struggled with a few more buttons before giving up. If she showed enough cleavage, someone might mistake her for a beer wench and tip her at least. Oh shit! What now? Maggie rolled her eyes. I forgot my clutch. Karen smacked Maggie's ass. Keep the guys at the bar and I'll be right down. Karen twisted the antique key in the lock and stepped into the room. The handbag was waiting on the edge of the dresser. Her eyes flicked on the stains on the carpet. Ruddy footprints that turned to a tight circle. Her lip quivered and the cigarette fell away. The realization hit her a moment before the door slammed shut and the hand clamped over her mouth. "You're not as pretty as my last girlfriend," Otis hissed over her shoulder. Wet steel lifted the blouse from her skin. "But I bet you're beautiful on the inside." She screamed into his palm as the blade sank in. Otis shrieked with laughter and slid the knife down, separating buttons and flesh. Karen squirmed for freedom, emptying her torso that much quicker. What's taking Karen so long? Carlton checked his watch again. A screaming guest cut off any reply. The trio ran toward the commotion. A man vomited in the hall while another sobbed against the chevroned wallpaper. A guard pushed his way into the bathroom and shouted profanities at his discovery. Maggie nudged through the crowd for a better look. The blood pool told her to stop, but she leaned into the bathroom further and saw the corpse sprawled on the tile. She slapped a hand over her mouth and ran back to the guys. "That guard from earlier," she whimpered. "He's been killed." "Let's go get Karen and get the fuck out of here," Darren said. They made their way to the staircase when a serving girl wiggled to them with a gift bag in her hand. "Are you Darren?" she asked. Darren nodded. She held up the bag. "Some old guy gave me $20 to bring this to you. He said it was an apology for earlier." She handed over the bag and waited around for a tip. When it was clear there wasn't one, she huffed and scampered off. Darren looked around the crowd for the man. "Y'all go get Karen and I'll wait here. That sick fuck said he was going to the bathroom, remember?" Maggie tugged Carlton's arm. They made it to the landing when Darren shrieked and fell to his knees. The couple ran back down and Carlton threw an arm around his friend. "What happened?" Maggie picked up the bag and looked inside, immediately dropping it and turning to puke. "Jesus," Carlton whispered. The tipped bag spilled its contents on the floor before them. Carlton's eyes locked on to the severed breasts. He slid away from them and tried to stand before fainting at the foot of the stairs. Maggie wiped her mouth on her sleeve in time to see Darren storming up the staircase. "I'm coming, motherfucker!" he shouted. "I'm going to tear your goddamn heart out!" More people were pushing down the hall to see what the commotion was, and more screams echoed out of the bathroom when they found out. Someone pulled a fire alarm. The klaxon sounded with staccato bursts of strobe lights. The squeaking wheels of an antiquated luggage cart was barely audible over the ruckus. Maggie watched the crowd split between those running for their lives and the ones that were waiting their turn to see the dead guy. A giggle sent a shiver up her spine right before the blow landed. She slumped to the floor, fighting unconsciousness. The old man smiled over her as he hefted her onto the cart. Another buffed-up Hulk in a security t-shirt grabbed the lunatic's shoulder. "What's going on here? Don't you hear the fire alarm?" he barked. The old-timer giggled. "Kids these days," he gestured to Maggie. "They can't hold their hooch. Just loading my nephew and his girlfriend up to get them out of here quicker, sir." "Good plan." The guard, hired for his imposing size and not his intellect, slapped the man's arm. "Hurry up and get them to the lawn." "Yes, sir." Maggie blinked twice and then blacked out. Maggie's eyes flicked open and closed until vision edged fuzzily from the abyss of unconsciousness. The world around her was a kaleidoscope of swimming colors and dancing lights. Someone had shut off the fire alarm, and far away the first responders' sirens were caterwauling down the country roads to the Springer Hotel. The spotlights outside continued their dance across the facade of the hotel and brought the 12-foot-tall stained glass rose window into focus. Maggie slowly became aware of the plush leather chair cushioning her body, and then the cords that bound her to it by the wrists. She turned the chair to take in her surroundings. Across the ornate desk, Darren was strapped to another, less expensive chair in a similar fashion, only he was stark nude. His mauled, bloody nose told her he'd gone down just as painful as she did. OK Brewing ads were framed on the wood-paneled walls, and shelves held industry awards and commemorative bottles. In the center of the room was a pedestal with a glass case atop and a mason jar inside on a decorative pillow. Their captor was nowhere to be seen in the vast office. Where? Maggie cleared her throat and tried again. Where are we? Darren sniffled. The CEO's office. I recognize it from the brochure. Did you find Karen? Maggie braced herself, already knowing the answer. Is she really gone? He butchered her. Darren broke down, crying loudly and struggling against his bonds. He cut her to pieces, Maggie. Shh, Maggie hissed. You have to keep it down. We don't know how far he's gone. He could hear you. I'm sorry. Darren choked on the words. The police, they're coming. They've got to be. Maggie pushed her chair along the carpet. Yeah, to investigate a murder, not to rescue us. They won't even have a head count until tomorrow. She rounded the desk and rolled closer to Darren. Untie me. Darren wiggled his hand until he got his fingers on the knot that held her left arm in place. Maybe Carlton will tell them we're missing and they'll come find us. Maybe. She scanned the room for her boyfriend. The hazy memory of her capture replayed in the back of her mind. Maybe Carlton woke up and ran. Or maybe he woke up and got himself killed. Her attacker's words came back to her slowly like letters floating in a bowl of alphabet soup until they made a sentence again. Keep working the knot, she whispered. The door swung open, and the old man entered with a skip. Oh, goody! You're awake. He giggled excitedly and grabbed the back of Maggie's chair. Darren tugged the knot hard until the man wheeled her away and tore the cord from his fingers. The man parked Maggie next to the desk and opened one of the drawers. He clicked on the vintage lamp to rifle through the contents until he squealed happily. The shears gleamed in the dim, amber light. These will do just fine. He stroked Maggie's cheek with the point and then went for Darren. I was afraid you two would sleep right through the big moment. It's almost midnight. The blackout at the asylum. Maggie swiveled her chair slightly. Darren had made some slack in the knot, and she rolled her wrist slowly to loosen it further. I saw it on the news a few days ago. They said there were too many bodies to tell if anyone escaped. But you did, didn't you? You set that many creative, free spirits loose in one place, and things are bound to get interesting, the man said with a gentle tittering. The blackout was a gift from God, and one should never refuse a gift. So, Maggie tugged softly to see if she could squeeze out. Who are you? Why, you're right. I feel like I've known you so long that I plain forgot to introduce myself. He knelt on the floor in front of Darren and tapped his fingers on his captive's knee. A watch alarm beeped in the hallway. Maggie let her head hang and bit her lip when the door started to open. She kept her eyes closed as she raised her head and hoped she was wrong. She wasn't. The cops will be here in a few minutes, Carlton said. We don't really have time for this, Uncle Otis. You should never rush a celebration, Carl. Carl nodded anxiously. That's true, I suppose. We can take the bootlegger tunnel in the basement all the way to the fireworks bunker. There's an electric cart there. No sound and a 4-hour battery. There's a farm a few miles away. By the time the cops search this place, we'll be free and clear, but we need to go soon. Of course, my dear boy. But it's not really New Year's. He slid the chrome blades around Darren's scrotum. Until the ball drops. The giggling disappeared in the wave of Darren's frantic screams as the scissors closed slowly on the wrinkled flesh. Maggie jerked her arm free while her psycho boyfriend laughed it up with his long-lost uncle. She worked the knot on her other hand and freed herself as Darren's cries turned sharper. The glands plopped on the shag carpet and his head lulled. Maggie launched herself from the chair, snatching a trophy from the desk adorned with a gold-plated beer keg. The ornament twinkled on its arcing path toward Carlton. The stone base stamped a dent into his forehead, and a backswing snapped the keg off and sent it, and a few teeth, through the glass case resting on the pedestal. Otis buried the shears into Maggie's thigh. She cried out and collapsed beside him. The madman straddled her, squeezing her throat with his free hand and leaning close. His hot, fetid breath was like roaches crawling across her cheek. She twisted her head away from him, her arms stretched for something she could use to free herself. "My nephew's letters told me how sweet your candy was." Otis ran his tongue across her ear. He pressed the point of the scissors into her belly and laughed hysterically at the impending kill. "I only wish I had the time to taste it." "Taste these." Maggie shoved the severed testicles into his open mouth. Otis leaned back, twisting to spit them out. Maggie grabbed his hand and shoved it toward him, lodging the scissors into his pudgy belly. Otis ripped the office cutlery from his abdomen and raised them overhead. "You bitch!" Maggie jammed her fingers into the wound, pressing deeper until she felt something slippery between the tips. She spread her fingers, tearing the wound and drawing a fresh scream from Otis. Her hand pushed through and disappeared inside him as she clenched her fingers around the tissue. Maggie jerked her hand free, and gravity did the rest. The intestines twisted out of the new orifice like a worm wriggling on a hook. Otis rolled away, screeching. He discarded the scissors to push his guts back in as he crawled for the door. Carlton groaned on the floor and staggered to his feet after a series of failed attempts. Maggie stood next to the pedestal and read the little plaque in front of the decorative pillow. The jar of moonshine was the only thing that survived the fire in 1931. She hefted the mason jar and examined the contents. Carlton rubbed the oozing wound in the center of his head and cleared the blood from his eyes just in time for the container to meet his face. He staggered backwards and fell on top of the desk. Maggie dug in her pocket and limped closer while Carlton struggled to remove a shard of glass from his cheek. Can't we talk?" He held up his hands defensively. "I mean, you don't turn your back on family. Right, Maggie? You get it, don't you?" Maggie struck a match and twisted it between her fingers. "I told you, I came for the fireworks." Carlton slowly lifted his shirt to his nose and sniffed the alcohol-saturated fibers. "Oh, shit!" He rolled over the desk. "Come on, Mags! This isn't you! You're not a killer!" New year, new me. She lit the book, igniting the remaining matches in a sulphurous flash. Compliments of the house. Maggie tossed the matchbook and Carlton ignited instantly. The flames flared over his face as he spun, sprinting for the giant window and diving through it. The stained glass fell through the spotlights like shards of a shattered rainbow as he plummeted toward the cool salvation of the beer fountain. Maggie stood in the empty frame and glanced down. Carlton's burning body danced on the end of Poseidon's trident. Maggie watched until it went still. His jaw tore away from the prongs, and his corpse dumped into the fountain with a puff of steam and an anticlimactic sizzle. She ambled away from the window, collected the scissors from the carpet, and made her way to the stairwell. Her leg throbbed as her toes squished with each step as the blood collected in her boot. She limped down the stairs, following the crimson trail left by Otis and leaving her own as she braced a bloody hand on the wall for balance. In the basement, she found the pile of boards where Carlton had reopened the bootlegger tunnel, and beside them, the carpenter's hatchet he used to pull them down. She slipped the scissors into her pocket and scooped up the small axe before continuing her pursuit. In the stretch of pitch black, a flashlight danced unsteadily ahead of her. Maggie didn't know how long the tunnel went on, so she pushed herself to catch up. If Otis got out first, he'd get in the cart and disappear before anyone could catch him. She couldn't let that happen. Maggie bit her tongue to keep the screams at bay. She just needed to get closer. The light dropped, followed by a curse. It rolled chaotically before it steadied and rose. Otis had fallen, and Maggie used it to her advantage, pushing her wounded leg into a hobbling sprint. "Otis!" she cried out. The light stopped moving. Otis giggled maniacally and started to turn. She reached back and hurled the hatchet. The laughter turned to a howl as the blade found its target. Maggie watched the beam swirl and fall to the ground once again. The flashlight rolled down the path, and she retrieved it on her way. Otis was sprawled in the gravel with the hatchet sticking out of his skull, intersecting his scar. "Not again," he whimpered. "I haven't seen you since last year, Otis." Maggie shined the light in his face and drew the scissors from her pocket. "Did your nephew's letters tell you we used to go axe throwing with Darren and Karen?" Otis smiled slowly. His giggling turned to a rasping cough. Maggie knelt beside him and worked her fingers into his waistband. "You know, I think I missed it earlier. The part where the ball dropped." Otis wasn't laughing anymore. Maggie wiped her fingers on her jeans, collecting more blood than she got off, and flipped the ignition switch. The little golf cart jutted forward and whirred across the manicured grounds to the wall of flashing lights waiting at the Springer Hotel. Her mind roamed as the cart bounced along the path. She wondered if this would make it into the movie, or if they'd save it for the sequel. The final look of shock on Otis Kilgore's face as she left him in that tunnel would make a great fade to black. Maggie thought about him bleeding out in the darkness and started to giggle. Don't you just feel ready to watch the ball drop and ring in the new year? I know I do. I hope you enjoyed the last terrifying story of 2021, and I can't lie, it's blowing my mind. 2021 has been very good to us here at Weekly Spooky. It's brought about a massive listener growth. Our Patreon has grown immensely, although we're still not quite to 100, so if you want to help us out, go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on Patreon. You get exclusive content, exclusive access to early episodes on occasion, and you get to know that the show's going to keep bringing the spooky on the weekly. So if you have a chance, if you're able, go on, join the Patreon. I promise it won't hurt. So, speaking of Patreon, I want to say a huge thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little extra to hear their name come out of my velvety voice. And those are Gino Lyons, Karen Ouimet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, Rob Fields, and Kevin Fry. Thank you all so much. Now, it's time for the big announcement, my friends, the thing I made you wait until the end of the program for. Next week, and for the entire month of January, we're going to be trying something devious and new. We are going to feature a 4-part story taking place in Weekly Spooky's universe of Strickfield, written by Rob Fields. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's our first time dipping our toe into longer form content, so hopefully you guys really enjoy it. And if it's not your cup of tea, we'll be back in February with brand new scary stories every single week. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun to experiment with a couple of long stories here and there. So I hope you enjoy biting your nails waiting for the next installment every single week. And thank you all so much for giving me such an incredible 2021. We're going into the 3rd year of Weekly Spooky. I can't tell you how much it means to me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you want to send us anything, just email us at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. Anyway, for myself, for my producer Dan Wilder, for my composer Ray Mattis, I will talk at you in the new year.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. trust me.
Uh-oh, this is a little bonus audio. Sincerely, if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you so much. Weekly Spooky is it's a serious passion project of mine, and I'm so glad to see so many people tuning in every week to enjoy a scary story with me. So we're going to make 2022 so scary, so spooky, and so fun. I can't wait to do it with you all. Let's make Halloween a weekly endeavor, shall we? And on to the new year.